Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Transport is not only a vehicle of our economy. It's also not only about trains and planes and roads and rail. Transport is also not only about road safety or emissions or noise. What transport is what brings us together as society, is what helps to turn the ideas into the reality. It's what makes the relationships, such as today, what we are doing today, tomorrow, possible. It makes it possible for our freedoms and rights to flourish. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we'll be discussing with amazing speakers from Europe, from Asia, from Africa today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Global Gateway session on transport corridors. It is now my honor to invite the first keynote speaker, Prime Minister of the Republic of Cape Verde, Mr. José Ulisses de Pina Correa e Silva. Please, Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
I think the headphones will be required because I'm going to talk in Portuguese. Muito boa tarde, excelências, todo o protocolo observado. Eu gostaria de agradecer o convite para participar nesta sessão temática integrada no Fórum Global Gateway. Esta sessão permite-nos a oportunidade de partilhar experiências, desenvolver abordagens partilhadas para desafios comuns. Gostaria de reconhecer a pertinência da escolha deste tema, corredores de transportes. Gostaria de congratular com a estratégia da Global Gateway que converge com as prioridades de transformações estruturais que precisamos acelerar em África e que envolve o investimento público, o investimento privado e parcerias público-privadas. O mundo está cada vez mais interligado e sempre que se verificam disrupções na conectividade e na mobilidade, os custos e os prejuízos são enormes para todos. O exemplo do que passamos com a pandemia da Covid-19 retrata bem este corte nas conectividades e nas mobilidades e os impactos que isso provocou. Conectividade é um impulso humano, um imperativo existencial, pois ao contrário da geografia política que delimita os Estados, as fronteiras físicas, é a conectividade que assegura o contacto, a aproximação, a troca, a união e a própria sobrevivência. Não temos dúvidas de que o mundo estará melhor com melhores conectividades para a mobilidade de pessoas, para a mobilidade da arte, cultura, conhecimento e de ciência. E todas estas áreas circulam através de pessoas, para maiores e melhores transformações e transações de capitais, comércio, investimento e turismo. Estendemos o conceito de conectividade para além dos transportes, para focar também em corredores de conhecimento, de inovação, de ciência, de tecnologia, de cultura e de pessoas, que também sem transportes seriam difíceis de serem mobilizados de um continente para outro ou de um país para outro. O mundo conturbado em que vivemos ultimamente tem-nos concentrado no lado negativo e impactante das crises. Mas é preciso não perder a perspectiva de um mundo positivo que temos todos a obrigação de deixar às gerações atuais e às gerações futuras um mundo confiável, de paz e sustentável. Do ponto de vista da África, é evidente de que precisamos crescer mais economicamente e ter melhor inserção na economia mundial para produzir, exportar, criar empregos bem remunerados, erradicar a pobreza extrema e proporcionar a felicidade aos nossos povos. Conectividades através de sistemas eficientes de transportes são fundamentais para a integração da África no sistema económico mundial e para a integração regional e interregional das relações económicas entre os países africanos. A zona de livre comércio continental africano só é possível ser operacionalizada através de sistemas de transportes e sistemas de logísticas eficientes. O desenvolvimento da economia digital precisa de infraestruturas de telecomunicações, de internet e de elevado desempenho, que passa por cabos submarinos de fibra óptica, ligando continentes e conectando países. É o digital associado às conectividades de transportes a grande oportunidade para a aceleração do desenvolvimento em África. Minhas senhoras e meus senhores, Cabo Verde é um pequeno estado insular em desenvolvimento, um CITES. A conectividade aérea e marítima para a mobilidade, unificação do mercado nacional e ligação do país com o resto do mundo é uma condição imperativa. Aliás, em Cabo Verde, dizemos que é uma condição existencial. Como a generalidade dos CITES, a decisão de investimento em infraestruturas pesadas não deve ser condicionada ao investimento per capita, mas sim à geração de valor económico e social e transformações estruturais que os investimentos provocam. Em países arquipelágicos, as conectividades são via transportes aéreos e transportes marítimos. Cada ilha precisa de aeroporto e de porto. Os custos destas infraestruturas em ilhas com pequena população é claramente que não podem ser determinados em função de investimentos per capita. Num país como Cabo Verde, em que somos 500 mil habitantes, temos 4 aeroportos internacionais. Todas as ilhas têm que ter portos. As outras ilhas que não têm aeroportos internacionais têm que ter portos para conectividade aérea. Nunca seriam construídos nem portos nem aeroportos se fôssemos calcular o investimento em função do per capita, investimento versus a população residente. O valor económico e social que esses aeroportos criaram e criam na mobilidade de pessoas, no turismo, na ligação ao mundo, é muito superior aos custos dos investimentos. 2 dos aeroportos internacionais de Cabo Verde, de Sal e da Praia, têm certificação para realizarem voos diretos para os Estados Unidos da América. É a consideração dessa perspectiva de criação de valor que conduziu ao engajamento da União Europeia e do BEI no financiamento do Porto do Maio e na modernização do Porto de Palmeiras, na Ilha do Sal. Os impactos na mobilidade, no transporte de cargas e mercadorias, no comércio interno e externo e no turismo garantem o retorno desses investimentos. É a consideração da perspectiva de criação de valor que justificou o financiamento do cabo submarino de fibra óptica Ela-Link, considerando a localização privilegiada de Cabo Verde entre o continente africano, a Europa, os Estados Unidos da América e o Brasil. É a criação de valor económico e social que justifica as propostas que Cabo Verde apresentou ao Global Gateway na área portuária para posicionar o país no transshipment, na área da reparação naval e de reforço da conectividade digital. Partilho convosco ainda uma outra perspectiva para terminar. Cabo Verde é o único país arquipelágico na CDO. Em 2017, foi assinado um tratado que cria corredor rodoviário Dakar-Abidjan. E nós perguntamos onde é que Cabo Verde se integra num corredor rodoviário no continente africano, sendo que nós somos ilhas. Não nos podemos integrar nem em corredores rodoviários, nem em corredores ferroviários a nível continental. O tratado teve que ser revisto para integrar Cabo Verde no corredor marítimo, isso sim faz sentido, Dakar, Praia e Abidjan. Por isso quero aqui ressaltar que a dimensão dos pequenos estados insulares em desenvolvimento é muito importante quando tomamos decisões de investimentos e decisões de investimentos de avultados volumes, mas que são necessários e que, se forem calculados em termos de PIB per capita, nunca seriam realizados. Termino saudando a visão partilhada sobre a importância das conectividades para o desenvolvimento. Obrigado pela vossa atenção. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. From beautiful Cape Verde, we are now going to beautiful Georgia. I would like to invite, for the second keynote speech, the Prime Minister, Mr. Irakli Garibashvili. Please, Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear heads of states and governments, commissioners, ministers, dear friends. It is a great honor and privilege to address the Global Gateway Forum, and I would like to thank President von der Leyen for hosting us today in Brussels. In December 2021, when the Global Gateway Initiative was introduced, the European Union invited partners to focus on sustainable development by improving transport and energy infrastructure, to reinforce health and education systems, and to promote digital advancement. Being at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, the Georgia strategic geographic location has been one of our strongest assets. Therefore, we have made enhanced connectivity as a priority of our domestic agenda, and we have been working with our international partners and international financial institutions to transform our country into a regional transport, logistics, and digital hub. Although Georgia has no land border with the European Union, we have yet untapped opportunities across the Black Sea that will firmly anchor us with the European Union and allow utilizing the full potential of integration into the EU single market. Given the ever-growing importance of diversifying and expanding east-west trade, the middle corridor across Georgia is becoming a viable alternative to existing routes connecting Europe and Asia. With enhanced infrastructure capabilities, streamlined processes, and competitive costs, the importance of this corridor is growing. To support Georgia's position as a regional center for trade and logistics, my government focuses heavily on development of major infrastructure. In recent years, significant investments were made to upgrade the country's roads, railways, and airports, as well as to develop new transport infrastructure projects. These include the Black Sea Submarine Electricity Cable project, which will create transit opportunities and back-to-back trade options of green renewable energy between the European Union and the South Caucasus via Georgia, which with improved feeder connections in the Black Sea will enhance international transit through the middle corridor. The development of the new new deep sea port in Anaklia, Georgia, will increase Georgia's capabilities to ship large quantities of cargo. Furthermore, An underwater fiber optic cable in the Black Sea will ensure fast internet connectivity from the Southeast Europe to South Caucasus and beyond, delivering faster and more reliable internet connections to our people. In order to increase the transit potential of Georgia, the capacity of the national railways will increase twice in volume by the end of 2024, along with planned improvements to major highways and the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway. My government is enhancing air connectivity through the construction of a new international airport in Tbilisi, which will function as a top-tier transportation hub for solidifying Georgia's position as a significant participant in the global aviation sector. Acknowledging the growing energy demand and the urgency of addressing climate change, we are proactively exploring new initiatives within the renewable energy sector. These include hydropower, wind, solar, and other sustainable sources. And as you know, key pipelines across Georgia, including major oil and gas pipelines, ensure secure transportation of hydrocarbons from the Caspian and Central Asia to Europe. All the new transformational projects will bring additional jobs, economic growth, and prosperity to our people and the region at large. The role of our development partners in implementation of these projects is paramount, of course. Among others, the European Investment Bank is one of the leading financial institutions which supports Georgia and aligns with our priorities. Since start of operations, the EIB has provided a significant amount of loan, more precisely 2 billion euros in our country, regardless of complex security challenges and issues. The ongoing occupation of my territory, of our territories, Georgia's territories by Russia, other regional and global issues and challenges, which creates instability, is a challenge for Georgia as well. But thanks to our pragmatic foreign and economic policies, our government has managed to secure an uninterrupted peace and stability. We maintained a decade of uninterrupted peace in Georgia and also ensured strong economic growth. Georgia has experienced double-digit economic growth for 2 consecutive years, with a GDP growth rate of over 10% in 2021 and 2022, and this positive growth trend has continued in 2023 with an average economic growth of 7% and a very low inflation of below 1%. According to IMF projections, Georgia is expected to maintain its position as one of the fastest growing economies. Georgia's record of prudent macroeconomic decisions and structural reforms continue to drive our strong economic performance. It is not a coincidence that Georgia's legal, business, and investment environment has been highly commended in international rankings by various international rating institutions, and I want to mention some of them. The World Justice Project's 2023 Rule of Law Index places Georgia as the top-ranking country in the Eastern Europe and Central Asia regions regarding the rule of law. Georgia is the top-ranked nation for state budget transparency according to the Open Budget Survey. In the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report, Georgia has outplaced many EU and NATO countries. And according to the Fraser Institute's report, Economic Freedom of the World 2023, Georgia is among the top 25 countries with the freest economies. Each step we take aims at transforming, modernizing, and developing our country and bringing Georgia back into the European family, where it belongs. I want to take this opportunity and talk about Georgia's progress on our Euro integration path, remarkable achievements of my government, including the association agreement, deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, visa-free regime with the European Union, demonstrate our geopolitical priority to become an EU member state. The recognition of Georgia's European perspective last June has unlocked a new chapter in our relationship with the European Union. Recent surveys show that nearly 90% of Georgians support the European membership. Importantly, dear friends, we have demonstrated unwavering commitment to address 12 priorities set forth for the EU candidate status through a rigorous, inclusive and transparent implementation process. We made strong progress in completing them. And we have taken a good note of all suggestions received from our European partners for the past few months and have made strong progress. Therefore, the Georgian people now anticipate that Georgia's performance and the current geopolitical context in the region will be fairly evaluated. With perseverance, dedication and a well-crafted plan to realize our nation's civilizational destiny of joining the European family, we look forward to attaining the candidate status. It is evident that Georgia's journey towards the European integration and strengthening of our global partnership is marked by unwavering commitment and resilience. Despite challenges we face, we remain determined in our choice to align with the European Union and its values. And our commitment to a path of democracy, rule of law and transparency remains resolute. Georgia, as a European nation and a natural global gateway, stands ready to strengthen the European Union and to contribute to its better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Prime Minister. And now we are going from one beautiful country to another one. The final keynote speech of this session will be given by the Prime Minister of the Republic of Moldova, Dorin Recean. Please, Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Oops.
That's for good luck.
Yeah, it's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'm honored to stand before you today at the Global Gateway Forum, and I extend my heartfelt gratitude to President von der Leyen for hosting this important event and offering us the possibility to discuss connectivity, a subject of great significance not only for Moldova, but for the entire global community. And the theme of today's forum, Stronger Together Through Sustainable Investments, aligns perfectly with Moldova's commitment to integrate into the regional connectivity networks and the broader global transportation landscape. We do recognize the importance of sustainable investments in connectivity, health, education, research for the global community. We believe that the path to a brighter future lies in partnerships, in shared objectives, and responsible allocation of resources. Russia's brutal and unjust war against our neighbor Ukraine has presented before the world an undeniable reality: disruptions in global markets, strains on supply chains, and precariousness of food security. It has starkly shown us that now, more than ever before, enhancing trusted connections that tackle the most pressing challenges is not just desirable, but it's imperative. In these trying times, Moldova has not been a mere observer. We have been proactive, taking tangible strides toward our vision of seamless connectivity. We have launched an economic recovery plan that underscores the connection between our economic potential and our infrastructure capabilities. To advance on this ambitious path, more investments are needed into upgrading and developing our existing rail, road, port infrastructure together with our partners. We also prioritize and initiated key infrastructure projects that align with the EU's trans-European transport network corridors, and we are deeply committed to ensuring their swift completion. These projects, once realized, will significantly bolster our transport links, offering faster, more efficient connections, both internally and with our neighbors. Moreover, our commitment to creating robust transport corridors has been furthered by our emphasis on the solidarity lanes. These dedicated pathways not only underscore our commitment to enhancing mobility, but also symbolize Moldova's resolve to stand as a beacon of cooperation, even in very challenging times, standing for Ukraine. In line with this vision, just recently during the Moldova Support Platform, we proposed the creation of an infrastructure and solidarity lane investment fund, which will serve as a vital vehicle to mobilize investments for major infrastructure projects. By establishing the fund, we aim to ensure that our country not only becomes a more attractive destination for investment, but also an efficient hub for regional and international trade. We recognize that well-connected and efficient transportation network is the foundation for accelerating our integration in EU single market. We understand the importance of modern, sustainable, and interconnected transport systems, which are instrumental in promoting economic growth, trade, and the movement of people. To this end, we are actively seeking investment in our infrastructure, and we are dedicated to creating the necessary conditions to foster this investment environment. The challenges we face today are daunting, but they are matched by the extraordinary opportunities that lie before us. Moldova's story is one of resilience, ambition, and hard work. As we chart our course towards greater connectivity, we invite partners, investors, and nations to join us. We can establish a robust network of global connectivity, transforming Moldova into a key player in the evolving landscape of international trade and economic development, and in supporting the reconstruction of Ukraine. We must work together united in purpose and determination by encouraging public and private investment. We must invest in infrastructure, in skills, in jobs, in order to emerge stronger and more resilient. Distinguished guests, I invite you to work together towards a future where we're indeed stronger together through sustainable investment. I would like to thank President von der Leyen for the vision and for heading this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and you have covered all topics and more that will be actually talked today in our amazing panel. For that, I would now like to invite European Commissioner for Transport, to please take the floor and frame the debate that will follow in the discussion. Thank you.
Dear Prime Ministers, dear Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, transport is a priority sector of the global gateway and a key enabler to connect our businesses, countries, economies. The EU has a successful track record of bringing businesses and people closer together through the Trans-European Transport Network, the so-called TEN-T, which is already in existence for over 3 decades. Building on this successful experience, we have expanded our essential transportation network beyond the EU's borders, first to the Western Balkans and now to Ukraine and Moldova. While transport corridors should be established with a long-term perspective in mind, the new geopolitical reality calls for a more flexible approach. We need to consider and adopt alternative scenarios and routes. Recently, we have witnessed how the blockade of the Ukrainian Black Sea ports threatened to compromise global food security. In addition, we need alternatives to the Northern Corridor for a secure connection between Asia and Europe. We therefore need more physical infrastructure. Without rail tracks, ports, and multimodal terminals, transporting goods across the globe would be impossible. We need to finance this essential physical infrastructure with private or public funds, with support from international institutions. But transport corridors do not only refer to physical infrastructure. Soft connectivity is also important, and I'm referring here to all the procedures associated with border crossings, operations in transportation hubs, and efficiency in general gained through digitalization. The importance of these soft measures was illustrated by the EU-Ukraine Solidarity Lanes, our initiative that redesigned transportation routes for Ukraine and Moldova's exports and imports this last year and a half. And I'm happy to announce that just before this meeting, I handed the Prime Minister of Moldova, Mr. Dorin Răcean, 3 grant agreements under the Connection Europe Facility for Transport, worth almost 45 million, to improve transport connections between Moldova and Romania along this trans-European network for transport. Similarly, the EU and the international partners have begun developing 3 strategic corridors that are currently on the agenda of global discussions: Trans-Caspian, Lobito, India, Middle East, Europe corridors, which will probably be discussed today. And I'm happy to see in this panel representatives from key countries in Central Asia and the EU neighborhood and enlargement region, EU companies, the Port of Rotterdam Authority. Setting the scene for today's discussion, I would like to conclude by underlining that our distinguished audience would benefit from your views on how to also decarbonize our global transport routes, including the very important topic of developing global green shipping corridors. Thank you very much, and I wish you a successful discussion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. That brings us to the debate. So now I would like to invite all distinguished speakers to please come and take your seats at the podium. Please. We will fill the stage. They can sit wherever they wish. Do you just... Yes. We will. There is a... You can sit on that seat. So thank you very much. I have very, very distinguished panel. You can see that in front of you. What I also have is a problem with time. As you know, our train has actually came to this platform a bit late, so we will try our best to be on time, but I can already promise to you that it will be a challenge. For this challenge, I have actually brought with me a small traffic light system. So basically, when you see this, please feel free to talk. When you see the yellow light, you know that you need to probably slow down or actually finish. Some would say speed up, but that's not a good rule. And when you see the red light, we know what that means. So with that, I would like to thank you, first of all, for being here, Your Excellency. You honor us with your presence. The first question would be for the Prime Minister of Serbia, Ms. Ana Brnabić. Welcome to the panel. As Commissioner mentioned in her speech, TEN-T network in the EU has been a lifeblood of European economy. It has really connected Europe. At the same time, from 2015, that has been extended to the Western Balkans, including Serbia. That has been one of the key elements of actually connecting the region within the EU, with the EU. And that has really made a huge change in Serbia and in the Western Balkans. At the same time, you now hear from our speakers, there are new corridors that we are talking about. The G20 is talking about the corridor that would connect India with Middle East with Europe. We have the Trans-Caspian corridor. Can you share your experience, Prime Minister? What did the TEN-T in the Western Balkans, in Serbia, the integration with the EU, what did it meant for Serbia, and what kind of lessons we could learn from them also for other initiatives such as the one I mentioned? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to test the traffic light. I think that firstly, the TEN-T network meant a lot in terms of economic collaboration and connections, strengthening the regional economy and regional economic action plan that we have also developed under the different initiative, Berlin process, but also with huge support from the European Union and European financial institutions. But it also building the TEN-T network also meant we saw it as a pledge for the future. It was also meant as a strong political connection between the Western Balkans because it enables almost easier flow of people and trade, and so politically, socially, economically, it is one of the most important things that one can wish for, and also one of the most tangible results one can achieve. And we are looking forward to continuing actually with our European partners development of the corridors, and especially now focusing on railways. So certainly I think my advice would be to follow the very, very carefully created the European transport policy, which is actually very good and very, very smart, and align your country's transport policies with that. We have done that with, focusing on green and digital, meaning the railways, and also if you do that, you have access to funds that otherwise you would not have to you would not have access to, including the EU financing, grants money, credits, European financial institutions, private sector money, and all of these things. So I think stick clearly with European policies in that respect. Firstly, they allow you to have more money than you would have otherwise, and secondly, they really are actually, in fact, very carefully prepared and very smart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. You have touched upon one of my favorite topics, and this is alignment of standards with infrastructure. This is always what we are talking about, that infrastructure projects need to go hand in hand with standards. In other words, European acquis. And that is the key to sustainability of projects. Thank you very much for these answers. Moving to the Minister of Transport of Kazakhstan, Mr. Karabayev. Minister, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there has been a significant drop of specifically the trade which was before going on the so-called Northern Corridor. Now, this has, of course, very much now shifted more in the south, which, of course, brings your country in the middle of transport corridors linking Central Asia, linking Asia with Europe. At the same time, of course, this offers an amazing opportunities, but also some challenges. Some of them were already discussed and were already presented by the study of the European Commission and EBRD when it comes to about sustainable transport corridor linking Central Asia with Europe. Now, in your view, what are your expectations from the investment forum which will follow actually this study, as well as your expectations more broadly for Central Asia as well as Kazakhstan when it comes to the EU's engagement on this Trans-Caspian transport corridor? Please, Minister.
Well, many thanks for the question itself. As the recent EBRD research states that as an alternative corridor to the Northern Corridor, the most sustainable corridor is so-called Middle Corridor or Trans-Caspian Corridor. And the facts are telling for themselves. For example, by using the transit through this so-called Middle Corridor in 2021, it used to be 800,000 tons. In 2022, it has doubled, became 1.7. And this year is showing that it is doubling again. And it's supposed to reach 3.6 million tons. And of course, there is an bottlenecks. For example, the maximum capacity of this corridor is 80,000 TEUs. And we have the plan within the upcoming 5 years to make 5 times more the capacity of TEUs, like almost 500,000 TEUs. This is the key plan of the roadmap which is signed between Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Georgia. In general, the capacity of this Trans-Caspian road is 6 million tons, and that roadmap that will help to eliminate all the bottlenecks and reaching up the capacity of the road until 10 millions, and also 500,000 TEUs. Well, this is the first thing. The second thing, that very recent, at the beginning of November, there is a special company which will be based in Astana International Finance Center. This company includes both countries like Kazakhstan, Georgia, and Turkey and Azerbaijan. One single company that will be responsible for operations throughout the whole Trans-Caspian corridor with one single tariff. This is the issue, so-called soft measure. And also, I would like to highlight some other figures. When we talk about Trans-Caspian corridor, we talk about movement between Europe and Asia. From that perspective, we see like today with China, we have 2 main checkpoints, railway checkpoint with a capacity of 28 million tons. And now we have started the construction of third checkpoint with a capacity of 20 million tons, which means like in 2025 we will have 50 million tons checkpoint with China. And also it is very important to have this like now transit through Kazakhstan by using this corridor is by trucks, like automobile transportation is becoming 3 times more than it used to be a year ago, which means like we need to construct our road in a proper way. Within the upcoming 6 years, we need to construct 5,000 kilometers of roads with a total budget of $15 billion. So this is the issue where we can cooperate with EU companies. Today we have heard about the budget of 300 billion euros, and we as a Kazakhstan has a potential projects for 25 billion US dollars. So these are the things where we can cooperate. Of course, the last thing that I would like to mention, this is an issue of the so-called green transportation. We have a big project which is under implementation. This is a 40 gigawatts of hydrogen, green hydrogen, with an capacity, with an investment of 50 billion euros. And today we have signed a concrete agreement to transport this hydrogen from Kazakhstan to Europe, so the so-called middle corridor. In general, we want to become, as long as we are a landlocked country, we want to become a land-linked country by making Kazakhstan big transit hub between Europe and China. So we see us as a part of the Global Gateway big program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Indeed, if we want to really harness any of these corridors, I think we need to fix specifically our ports, our rail, our border crossings, and our standards. If we do that, we will succeed. Thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you. We'll do our best.
Thank you. The next question is coming to the neighbor on your south, to Turkmenistan. Minister of Finance and Economy, Jorayev. Minister, as mentioned in the study also by Commissioner Valan, this second crossing, your country is again in the crossroad. It is the vital link between Central Asia and Caucasus, specifically on the Caspian Sea, and here the port of Turkmenbashi, which you have modernized, will play a crucial role. Now, which cross-border investments are, in your opinion, the most crucial in that respect? Another question is Turkmenistan now really opening for investments from the interesting IFIs that would like to invest in order to make sure that your ports are also filled to capacity? Please, Minister, the floor is yours.
Спасибо большое, господин модератор. Прежде всего, я хотел бы поделиться информацией о пропускной способности данного порта. Протяженность портового причала, рассчитанного на обслуживание 17 судов, одновременно составляет более 1800 метров. Да? Ежегодно морская гавань позволяет обеспечивать пропуск 400 тысяч контейнеров и 75 тысяч грузового транспорта. Суммарная пропускная способность Туркменбашинского международного морского порта достигает 25-27 миллионов тонн грузов в год. Для Туркменистана очень важное значение имеет реализация совместных проектов по развитию международных мультимодальных грузовых перевозок в целях активизации международного транзитно-транспортного коридора Каспийско-Черноморский коридор и транспортного коридора Европа-Кавказ-Азия. Иначе как Трасека называют. А также изучение возможностей совместного или доверительного управления Туркменбашинским международным портом в целях эффективного использования его мощностей. На данном этапе вся ее мощность пока еще не используется, но есть огромный потенциал, чтобы сделать так, чтобы этот порт служил во всю мощь. И данный морской порт является одним из важнейших звеньев в цепочке поставок различных международных транспортных коридоров, проходящих через территорию нашей страны. Я думаю, что в этом направлении для Туркменистана, исходя из того, что порт построен недавно, про его мощностях я уже говорил, поэтому инвестировать в Туркменистан сейчас выгодно, есть на то инфраструктурные решения, поэтому мы в этом направлении будем и работать. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much, Minister, for these words. And from Turkmenistan to Turkey, another country on the crossroad, connecting Middle East, Caucasus, Central Asia. Your ministry, Minister, is modernizing, is building new, specifically the railways, 10,000 kilometers of high-speed railway, connecting also all the way from Bulgaria to Iran. Your country is really on a crossroad and ready to engage in a global economic as well as trade routes for the benefit of all countries in the region. From your perspective and from your experiences, what would you say is the biggest challenge in creating those corridors, creating the links between so different countries, so different geographies? What you think that the EU and specifically the programs such as Global Gateway could be of help to you and of course your neighbors to really create the corridors that will function in the way that we want? Please, Minister, the floor is yours.
Ben de burada bulunuyor olmaktan duyduğum memnuniyeti ifade ediyorum. Davetiniz için ben sizlere teşekkür ediyorum. Sizlere ben Türkiye'den selam getirdim. Müsaadenizle ben de hem sizin sorunuza cevap olacak hem de söylemek istediğim bazı şeyleri sizlerle paylaşmak istiyorum. Türkiye'nin gerçekten stratejik bir konumu var ve hava yolu, karayolu, deniz yolu, demir yolu bütün modlarda faaliyet gösteren ya da gösterilmesine imkan sağlayan ülke konumunda. Biz sadece 4 saatlik uçuşla 67 ülkeye seyahat edebiliyoruz. 8.6 milyar, 9 milyar trilyon dolar düzeltiyorum. Bir ticaret hacmi söz konusu. Tabii biz 2053 vizyonu çalışmalarımız var. Yaklaşık bir 30 yıl sonrasını konuşuyoruz, planlıyoruz. Ama kısa ve orta vadede bazı çalışmalarımız var. Şimdiye kadar biz son 21 yılda ülkemizde 194 milyar dolarlık ulaştırma altyapısı yatırımı yaptık. Bundan sonra da 2053'e kadar yaklaşık 168 milyar dolarlık bir yatırım yapmayı planlıyoruz. Demir yolları çok kıymetli son zamanlarda, özellikle net sıfır emisyon yaklaşımı hasabıyla. Bunun için daha gayretliyiz bu noktada. Özellikle orta koridorda bulunan ülkemizdeki demiryolu bağlantısını biz Bakü, Tiflis, Kars'tan öncelikle ülkemize ulaştırdık. Sonra da Boğaz'dan, İstanbul Boğazı'ndan, Marmaray'dan geçişle bütün Avrupa'nın her tarafına demir yolunu ulaştırma imkanını yakaladık. Tabi bu bizim için yeterli mi? Bizim için yeterli değil. Bu demir yollarının kapasitesini de biz geliştirmemiz lazım. Özellikle Kars'la Sivas arasındaki yaklaşık 300 kilometrelik bir demir yolunu mutlaka iyileştirmeliyiz. Yine Marmaray'dan, Boğaz'dan geçen ve yoğun yolcu trafiği olan bir raylı sistemin alternatifi olan Yavuz Sultan Selim Köprüsü'nden yük taşımacılığına yönelik yaklaşık 122 kilometrelik bir demir yolu ağını da hayata geçirmemiz gerekir. Bununla ilgili çalışmalarımız da bizim devam ediyor. Bir başka konu yine orta koridordaki kapasitenin artırılması için Azerbaycan'dan Ermenistan veya İran üzerinden geçecek olan Zengezur koridorunun hayata geçirilmesini planladık. Onunla ilgili çalışmalarımızı başlattık. O bir taraftan devam ediyor. Tabii genel anlamda doğu-batı aksını konuşuyoruz. Ticaretin yoğun olduğu aks burası. Bütün bahsettiğimiz koridorlarda doğu-batı güzergahında. Ancak şunu atlamamamız lazım. Artık kuzey-güney güzergahları da ciddi bir şekilde değerli olmaya başladı ve biz doğu-batı güzergahlarını mutlaka kuzey-güney ile desteklememiz gerekir. Bu anlamda da Basra Körfezi'nden, Fav Limanı'ndan ülkemize yaklaşık 1200 kilometrelik bir demir yolu ve otoyol projesi üzerinde Irak, Birleşik Arap Emirlikleri ve Katar'la çalışıyoruz. Projesi bitmek üzere kısa zamanda inşaatına, finansmanını konuşuyoruz ve inşaatına başlamayı konuşuyoruz. Bu sayede biz Basra Körfezi'nden trene yüklenen bir yükün Avrupa'nın her noktasına ulaştırmasını da sağlamış olacağız. Ha istenirse Akdeniz ve Karadeniz'e de liman bağlantılarını sağlamış olacağız. Tabii bölgesel işbirlikleri önemli. Avrupa Birliği ile ülkemiz arasındaki ilişkiler her ne kadar kıymetli ve önemliyse de sarı kartı gördün mü? Evet. Avrupa Birliği ile ülkemiz arasındaki ilişkiler her ne kadar kıymetliyse de bizim doğudaki komşularımızla da ilişkilerimiz kıymetli. Gerçekten Gürcistan, Azerbaycan, orada Kazakistan, Özbekistan hepsiyle iyi ilişkilerimiz var. İkili, üçlü, dörtlü bir araya geliyoruz ve anlaşmalar yapıyoruz. Bu anlaşmalar da bizim hem o taraftaki bölgesel işbirliğine katkı sağlıyor hem de Avrupa'nın başlangıç noktası olan Türkiye'nin bu anlamdaki görevini tam anlamıyla yerine getirmeye çalışıyor. Ben konuşmamı sonlandırırken sizin özellikle sorunları nasıl çözeriz yaklaşımınız vardı. Oturarak çözeriz, konuşarak çözeriz, anlaşarak çözeriz. Ya bence bunu en iyi şekilde, en üst seviyede yapmalıyız. Bazı siyasi yaklaşımlarla bu süreçleri biz gerçekten aksatmamamız lazım. Özellikle Avrupa Birliği ile bu anlamda yeni bir yaklaşımın bu toplantı vesilesi olmasını temenni ediyorum. Beni dinlediğiniz için teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much, Minister. You can also see my traffic light works, so that's good news. And thank you very much for your input. I think it really shows all the speakers have really showed how both the international cooperation with neighbors, the standards, and of course sitting together to resolve any bottlenecks. And this is exactly what we are doing. That from roads to rail brings us all the way to the sea. We are very happy that we have with us the CEO of Port of Rotterdam, Mr. Sioens. Your challenge, of course, is something that we haven't heard today, and that is that the transport, in order to be sustainable, it also needs to be decarbonized. Maritime sector is one sector that also needs to do its part. You are in the best position to tell us if the approach that we have in decarbonization, both in Europe, and then, of course, maritime is, in its essence, the most international business of all. How does it work with other ports? How does it work in the maritime process? Are we on the right path? Is there a place for the EU, specifically for the Global Gateway, to engage, to finance the projects around the world on specifically the issues of decarbonization of the maritime sector? The challenge is yours.
And now you want a short answer?
Yes.
Start with giving me the green light.
Yes.
Okay, that's a big question, and I'll try to keep it short. Who of you know the Port of Rotterdam? Let's see some hands. Let's engage the room. Okay, that's not everybody. So I'm impressed. But Port of Rotterdam is Europe's largest port. It does 470 million tons of throughput annually. That was a year ago. We'll have a bit less this year, because of the economic circumstances. That caters for 30,000 seagoing vessels, 100,000 barges annually through our port. Half of that is logistics, the other half is energy related. Now that used to be something to be proud of, and today, to me, that's a daunting figure, because it all has to become sustainable, and that's really what keeps us at the Port of Rotterdam. I sleep very well, but if I'm awake, that is what I'm thinking about, because it's a huge task, and I invite you to drive through the port and see the challenges ahead. But we have started. So there are already things happening in the port. We have biorefineries, we have wind farms landfalling, where there's a company in the port, Shell, building an electrolyzer. End of this week, Friday, together with our king, we'll open the first hydrogen backbone through the port. So stuff is happening in the port. There's a lot more going on. But I think the challenge for a future port is to have a stable flow of green hydrogen, a stable flow of biogenetic CO2, and green energy, because that is the place where future synthetic fuels will be built. And that is also going to be needed into the future. And then a port is not a place in itself. It is, as you rightfully said, connected to the rest of the world by shipping. And it is as strong as its hinterland connections, because nothing stays in the port. That's so beautiful about a port. A port is where worlds meet. Worlds get connected in a port. Stuff and people come in, stuff and people leave again. So how do we go about greenifying these supply chains? And by the way, I think the size of a port in the future should be determined not by the lowest price, but by the most sustainable supply chains they can offer. If there's a more sustainable supply chain into Europe, and it would lead through Antwerp or Hamburg or Le Havre, it should go there. It shouldn't go through Rotterdam. That is, I think, the challenge we have, and that's also the bridge to cooperating with European ports in order to build a new system, a new energy system and a new logistics system that is zero emission. And when that system is there, then we can start thinking about a competition again. And until then, we have to cooperate to make this happen as fast as possible. Now, if I look at those green shipping lanes, then what we did is we started off with another big port in the world, being Singapore. And we said, let's start and make a green corridor between Singapore and Rotterdam. Let's sit down together and do it. We like to be practical and start creating proof points that it can happen. I'm still on green.
Just about.
Okay, just about. So let's prove it. And it doesn't mean we do not want to create any green corridors with other ports, but that would slow us down. We want to show that it can happen, and it has a physical side. What kind of fuels are we going to bunker? It's going to be methanol, it's going to be ammonia, it's going to be electrical, it's going to be even nuclear in the future, I think. There's going to be all kinds of, it's going to be liquid hydrogen, it's going to be all of the above. And there's a digital side to it, and there's a governance side to it. Let's find it out. Let's make the data transparent. Let's also work on the efficiency of the supply chains, and when it's there, we can multiply it to other routes. Within the Port of Rotterdam and the Port of Antwerp, with whom we work together, we're also talking to, also there, we're trying to just do stuff. So we're working with Namibia. Yesterday and this morning we were talking to Numport, we were talking to ministers of Namibia on actually creating ammonia production in Namibia, and together with Luderitz we already created a port master plan and actually to cater for these new export flows. So what we like to do is just show that it can be done, work together with the Global Gateway initiative, and actually it has already started. We have been working with Namibia since 2020 already for the last 3 years in order to try and make it happen. So together with Antwerp, together with all of you, I think it can be done. I think we can reach the goals that are set by the EU, and I think we can reach the goals that this world dramatically needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have brought together the second of my favorite topics, and that is that transport, digital, and energy should be planned together. These are the connectivity industries, and that is what we need. If we do not have energy being planned with transport, if we don't have a digital plan with transport, we will not get the effect that we need in transport. So thank you very much for bringing that point so clearly to us.
And I must add that your remark about standards also goes into there. Because look at Namibia. If Antwerp would be involved by developing in splendid isolation a new system, and we would be doing so in Luderitz, then of course you need the same standards in a country. You need the same international standards. You need the same governance kind of models. So also that comes into the equation.
Thank you very much. And now we are going, by the sea all the way to Angola. Minister of State for Economic Coordination, Mr. José Massano. Commissioner, the President of the Commission today in the morning mentioned the key word for you, and that is the Lobito Corridor. Can you tell us, how do you see the Angola's part in the Lobito Corridor? What kind of investments do you need? What do you need in order for that not to be only priority, but also to happen in practice on the ground? When we will be able to drive, to take a train on Lobito Corridor? Please.
Thank you so much. A tremendous pleasure to be here. And it was fantastic to hear this morning about Lobito Corridor once again at such a high stage. Yes, it's one of the key priorities that we have in the country. Angola, by the way, is an oil-driven economy. Oil accounts for around 1/3 of the economy. And we are in that process of diversifying our own economy. So in order to do it, it's important to have the right infrastructure. And the corridor comes as part of that process. And the good thing about the corridor, and we are talking here about connectivity, is that not just Angola. So it's connecting Angola, RDC, and Zambia to start with. And so those three countries coming together, creating new opportunities, committing more resources, not just the corridor itself, but the opportunities that it brings with it. So along the corridor, we have plenty of our arable lands. The potential is there for economic growth, for economic diversification. So we, as leading part of that process, will keep on committing whatever appears to be necessary to ensure that the corridor not just fulfills the needs of Angola, but also address the needs of Congo, the needs of Congo RDC, the needs of Zambia, and also connecting them to Europe, connecting them to the US, America, and to the rest of the world. So very pleased that the process has initiated. So we have already awarded a concession to a partner group consisting of European entities. So they are now in the process of mobilizing the resources required to properly develop the corridor. But at the same time, because we already have that line that goes the Bangala Railway all the way to RDC, Zambia. But now we are talking about a new line, just connecting Luanda, Lubito to Ndola in the Republic of Zambia. So there, again, that will be needed, not just the financial capacity, but something that we also expect from that partnership is knowledge, is to bring the knowledge, to bring the standards that we're talking here to our region so that we can grow as part of something bigger, trying to develop the countries, but at the same time, building our economies a little more integrated with the rest of the world. So this is basically what we're trying to achieve. And if we are successful in doing that, we believe that we also bring in better living conditions for the citizens of that particular region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister has mentioned another issue which is really a key, which we see as a, let's say, a challenge everywhere. And that is that not only we need new trains, new planes, roads, rail, and so on, we also need people to run them. And we need people who will deliver projects, who will actually be there. And for that, we also need a capacity building. And that is one part that we should not forget when we are talking about new transport, new infrastructure, is that we also need to invest in people who are preparing that. And thank you very much for bringing this up, Minister. Now, the last but definitely not least in our panel, it all comes down to money. We are very happy to have on our panel the President of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, who of course have the bank and yourself amazing experience of delivering projects within the European Union and now also all over the world, from Morocco to Mongolia, and now your mandate is even expanding. The successful example of that is, of course, the EU27, the TEN-T, the projects that you're already financing. What would you say is the most important thing when we are planning new projects, new lines, new corridors? What is, from the investment's perspective, from the investor's perspective, the most key element that when we are talking about new corridors, when we are talking about new connections, what should be prioritized? At the same time, another question, how do we bring in the private capital? Because that is the key question as well. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. And I think that it has been said already, but one key element for me in preparing connectivity project, transportation project, and so forth is about planning. And that's where the European experience is very important and very interesting, because it's not about only planning at national level, you know, your country, what you want to link, the cities, and so forth, but also internationally. And having this regional and global approach about what would make sense, what would the economy, I mean, where you have the cost benefits related, what is the strategy attached with your planification of transportation. And it's not, so it's about transport, road, railway, port, and so forth, but also what to do about and how to integrate economic strategy and connectivity planning. I think that's very important. That's why, for example, we were very happy to contribute to do this study financed by the EU on the Middle Corridor, because I think having this global approach, regional and in relation also with the geopolitical developments on what would be the most effective way, what are the different options, and how we see the benefits of the different options. I think this is a very important dimension of working on connectivity. On your second question, which is what are the conditions to bring private sector investment and so forth, I think the first thing is the quality of the project. And indeed, the quality of the project is related to the planning and so forth. It's also related to the standards. And that's one important dimension of the Global Gateway, to have high quality infrastructure with open procurement, high quality environmental and social standards and so forth. I know it takes time, and we heard that a lot with our partners. It's sometimes longer when you have good standards, but I think it's the best way to bring in private sector investors and to have good quality for the future sustainable infrastructure. The second element is, I think IFIs can play an important role, so international financial institutions, in bringing in the private sector, co-financing them or preparing projects that are directly ready for private investors, such as PPPs. I also know that PPP sometimes is complex because it needs a higher time for preparation, but it's a very efficient way to bring capacity, know-how, and financing, and not to rely only on budget financing that and government-led and so forth. And we have been very successful in a number of countries around in this panel on private sector PPPs in the airport sector, for example, where you have, the technicities and the know-how is very important, and we have very good example of what can be done. One of the important element also for our role is to bring financing, to bring private sector investors, but also to help capacity building, domestic capacity building, in order to have the capacity to prepare good projects. And then, it's a lot of investment, human capital investment, not only financial investment, but that's an important element. The third element is to have the environment which is conducive to investment. And in that respect, in the transport sectors, in a number of countries, you have state-owned enterprise, which have a very important role in the railway and so forth. And then the governance of this state-owned enterprise is going to be a very important element as, conducive for investment for IFIs and the private sector. I see the yellow. I will stop here. I can be very much longer, but I will stop here for the sake of time for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President, for this. I think one thing that really comes out of this debate is that corridors, when we're talking about corridors, when we're talking about networks, we are in the end always talking about prioritization. It's a signal to investors, to people, to everybody, what will be prioritized in a certain country. And I think that is the beauty of corridors. And that is why this cooperation that we have seen today in this panel, as well as your inputs, have really, really been very, very valuable. Thank you very much for this debate. And now is, of course, the time to see what the audience have heard. So it's my pleasure to ask if there is any question from the audience. Please raise your hand, ask a question, and introduce yourself. So I'm looking around if there is any question from the audience. If not, then it's 18:31, so this train has almost arrived on time to the station, but not just, because it's now our great pleasure to invite Commissioner for Neighborhood and Enlargement, Commissioner Olivier Varhelyi, to finalize this amazing session and to close it. Please, Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I think I need to thank on everybody's behalf the very enthusiastic moderator that we have for the afternoon. And in his other capacity, he's also a very enthusiastic manager of the transport community in Belgrade. And I think he has been instrumental in delivering the Economic and Investment Plan, which is the backbone of the Global Gateway to the Western Balkans. So thank you very much. I think that it is clear from all the interventions, and I think also from the whole debate of today, that investments in transport infrastructures are crucial in connecting economies and, of course, our people. So that is why, when you have seen this Commission redesigning its system of partnerships, that we took transport connectivity into the heart of everything we do, be it the neighborhood, be it the Western Balkans, or be it our global partners. This is what you see emerging in the economic and investment plans designed for the Western Balkans and our neighborhood. And this is what you see emerging through the Global Gateway. Because you see that we have put on the table altogether 77 billion euros of investments. 77 billion euros of investments in 3 regions in flagship projects. And we are talking about the Eastern Partnership, the Western Balkans, the Southern Neighborhood countries, where connectivity, transport, energy, and digital is the name of the game. And you have seen that out of this 77 billion euros, we have already been able to mobilize 13.6 billion euros. This is a major change compared to what you have seen before. This is a major change because we wanted to focus on the main bottlenecks. The main bottlenecks in front of growth and jobs, in front of connectivity between the regions and Europe, and the main bottlenecks of our trade. But it's not enough to say that it is a main bottleneck for us. So when we have started designing the economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans, which became afterwards a blueprint for everything we do also globally, we first reached out to our partners. And we wanted to find the main bottlenecks together. Because, you know, it's very difficult to sell someone he doesn't need. But it's very easy to sell something to someone who is in need of what you're selling. So I think you have seen that the impact of investments in transport goes way beyond the infrastructure investments. It goes way beyond developing our economies and trade connections and connecting businesses and people, because it creates completely new opportunities and creates a completely different landmark altogether. You have seen that the EU grants and guarantees and all the correlated loans that we're doing together with our European financial institutions and partners is continuing to flow, and not only continuing to flow, but it helps to bring strategic investments much faster, at a much higher level, with higher intensity, and I think it also triggered already a significant private investments that we have not seen before. So in order to deliver and bring the sustainable benefits, these investments, of course, need to be linked with proper enabling regulatory and market environment. Because it's one thing to bring the transport infrastructure, but if we do not have the market conditions to increase the capacities, this will not function. So we are happy to work with you on these as well, and we are happy to help to ensure the coherence of our networks and to create a better environment for our businesses. Because investments in the transport in our neighborhood are particularly important, as you see. They are not only connecting us with our neighborhood, but they are also capable of reducing significantly the gap of development between the neighborhood and Europe. So let me give you a couple of examples of what we are doing. First, maybe an example from the Western Balkans, where we have 32 flagship investment projects in transport only. This is based on grants of 1.77 billion euros, and we have leveraged, together with our international financial partners and with the private sector, more than 8 billion euros, 8.6 billion euros. This is something never seen before. And one of the flagships of this is, as it was mentioned by Prime Minister Brnabić, it is the Rail Corridor 10, which connects Central Europe with Serbia, North Macedonia, Greece and Bulgaria, and we also have a project connecting it to Turkey. And this is a major investment where we have been in competition with China, and we won because we have the better conditions. In the neighborhood of the south, in Morocco, we are investing in National Railway Company to modernize the railway infrastructure. In Egypt, we will contribute to strengthening the Egyptian railway sector, and we are financing the upgrade of the Tanta El Mansoura Damietta railway line. And to this day, we have already financed 15 projects worth of 5.3 billion euros of investments. Again, this is giving a major boost for the local community and the local economy. In the Eastern Partnership, we continue investing in the solidarity lanes. My colleague Vălean, Commissioner Vălean, has already mentioned them. And we are rehabilitating basically the priority transport axis that is connecting Ukraine and Moldova with the EU. And we are, with this, supporting trade in essential goods. And we are saving the Ukrainian economy through them. In Georgia, we are investing further in the East-West Highway. That will be a critical segment of the Trans-Caspian corridor that should connect Central Asia to Europe. And through the South Caucasus, we are seeing a new trade route emerging, and we want to be part of it. Furthermore, as part of the TEN-T Investment Action Plan, we are also preparing several investments with the aim to integrate the Eastern Partner countries fully into the TEN-T network. In Turkey, the Hakkari-Kapıkule Railway is our biggest investment, worth of 275 million euros, and it connects the Bulgarian border with Istanbul. Following the closure of the transport and trade corridors via Ukraine and Russia, this project and Turkey as a transport route is ever more important. The project is expected, this project itself only, is expected to generate 1.7 billion euros worth of economic and social benefits only in Turkey. In the regions further away, we also have significant investments. If you look at Africa, we will continue working together on the modernization of the road networks within the framework with strategic transport corridors. Also in Cabo Verde, after the inauguration of last year, September, the modernized port on the island of Maio, the EU and the EIB will continue working with the government on new ports development program. In Latin America, in Costa Rica and Colombia, we are exploring to support urban bus fleet electrification and electric charging stations deployment for the road transport. In Central Asia, we finance the study on the sustainable transport connections between Europe and Central Asia. And on that basis, we are now exploring public and private financing from member states, IFIs, and like-minded partner countries. In the Indo-Pacific region, as part of the EU Pacific Green-Blue Alliance, we will be supporting a feasibility study for the construction of a multi-purpose port on Christmas Islands and to support the socio-economic development of these islands. We will also continue rehabilitation work in the region, like in Laos, where we are working on the rehabilitation of National Road 13 along the north-south corridor. So, all in all, our work in the Global Gateway will contribute, and already contributes, to supporting the integration of our partners into the EU connectivity networks. It supports international transit, and it ensures that goods and people can move freely and be sure that the transit is affordable. And third, it reinforces the promotion of sustainable transport solutions and should contribute to the fight against climate change. Of course, to deliver on these commitments and objectives, we need to continue working with the private sector, and we need to make these projects even more attractive to them. So to conclude, I want to reiterate that transport connectivity is a strategic priority for the EU, and we have a credible, sustainable, and reliable partners for each other. We are partners for each other, that we can make this sector to be the key source of growth throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your words. Thank you to, first of all panelists, keynote speakers, commissioners, audience, translators, journalists, and everybody else. Have a good evening and a good dinner. Thank you very much.